Hey folks, Steve here with another World in Flames video. We'll be continuing our Case Yellow mini-series within the series here as the fight for France, the battle for France continues on into, still March-April turn here, so I guess we could say we're probably in April, just given the amount of time that's going to pass and how close we are to ending the turn. So somewhere in April, right, if we're looking at this as like a timeline thing. Sort of abstract there, but we could look at it that way. Last turn, just in review, the Axis had done very well. In the last video, the Axis had done very well. You can kind of see, remember we started, we took out the Netherlands a while back in the previous turn, and then really, we started this turn at the border against Belgium, and we've advanced now. We've had enough great impulses that we've actually forced, this nice wedge shape into France proper and are next to Paris. But in the process of doing so, we've had units flipped. Our Air Force is stuck refueling right now. The air, we've used up a lot of our air. Our pilots are exhausted, and so are the Allies. So there's just a lot of rough fighting now. And couple of things I'm trying to think through as the Axis. Now, technically, we're going to start here with the Allied impulse, but again, as the Axis, I just want to talk about kind of where we're at. We've done very well, right? We've got a hex next to Paris, but we've got some challenges. So here's the thing. We've got a few excess units behind the lines, but not many. In fact, because we've created this wedge shape, we've actually created quite a long line for ourselves. All the way from up here, swinging the whole way around and down. This is, it's pretty rough in terms of just the amount of hexes we're covering. Now, the Germans have had plenty. I've made sure to send units to the east of Poland to cover the bases for that, and partisans and everything, but it's not like the Germans are operating with a whole lot of slack in the rope. They just, any combat that goes poorly is going to be a major detriment to the Axis advance, because if they were to lose some units, that hurts their ability to have, and my camera screwed up. It hasn't done it for a while, but that's really annoying. So anyway, the point being here that the long line across, the edge of Belgium all the way up through down to, Switzerland is quite a long line that the Germans have to maintain. They'd rather not do that because they don't have reserves. So what would we do to shorten it? Well, the simplest thing would be to try to knock out those forces along the coast, the British and the French and Lille. If I were able to do that, we'd be able to kind of at least bring our line up a little bit and kind of clean up that whole area. So it would be better if we could do that. But of course, those are tough hexes to attack. The BEF is pretty strong there. It's going to take a lot of investment of air power to move that. Alternatively, I'd be looking at trying to force out that hex right at the tip of my finger next to Paris so that we could get 2 hexes on Paris. I think if I were to try to work out the numbers, I'm pretty certain I'm going to need at least those 2 hexes to take Paris. At some point, yeah, sure, it'd be great to get the third one up here in the northeast hex from Paris, but at the very least, we could possibly do it with 2, and if we were able to do it with 2, that would be ideal, right? Now, the thing about getting into Paris is we would have to get there and then hold it until the end of the turn to the peace phase. So it's not just, get into Paris and we're done. We've got to hold it too. So there is sort of an element of Case Red here. Go look up Fall Rot or Case Red to understand it. That we kind of have to make sure that Paris is secure. It can't just be, we took the city and that's it. We've got to ensure that we've, hampered or incapacitated these guys in the north as much as possible, and that we've forced our way down a little bit so that the French really can't get many forces up against Paris once we've taken it. It'll be hard for them to get enough units next to Paris to counterattack it and try to take it back. So that's kind of, the things we need to be thinking about. It can't just be a mad dash, to Paris. But case in point, it is now the Allied turn. And what's going to be really important here, I've been thinking through this in the days since I last recorded, because I've been busy, as usual, you know how it goes. I can get to some, I can get a few videos out a week if I'm fortunate. There is an important hex here that could be attacked. So we have a mechanized unit. It has 8 combat factors, but it is flipped, and basically these 2 French stacks could attack. So there's 8 factors here, there's 9 factors here, that's 17 to 8, that's 2 to 1 odds on the assault table, +1 because the mechanized unit there is flipped, but -1 because it is a mechanized unit and there aren't French mechanized units to attack it. It means it's a straight die roll on the 2 to 1 odds on the assault. Now, if I look at that, if I look at what's possible, there's like a really good chance that the French screw the pooch and they have to lose 2 units, or even 1 unit. And the difficulty, and the reason why we wouldn't do that is that, one, okay, we lose a unit somewhere, probably this hex, but then the rest of the units flip, which means that, they're more susceptible to being attacked again. So I could actually entertain some attack from here with this unit. There's a SS unit there I could move up, and we could attack the remnant unit there. And it would have a decent chance of working there. Now there's a chance, the Germans won't even get to do that because the turn could end and then everybody gets flipped anyway, but there is that danger. However, there's a pretty good chance, greater than 50% chance as I'm looking at the table here, that the German unit is destroyed. So even if we lost French units, there's a 50-50 chance that we could destroy that German mech and then advance a French unit in there. And even if we lost units, we would have now moved up into the German area and have created a tough situation. Now the Germans would have to take that hex back. They will have lost a unit that they'd have to rebuild, and so it would be there. It's a major risk-reward question of, do the French try to counterattack where the Germans may have overextended themselves? If I rolled very poorly, right? If I rolled 1, then it has done nothing but hurt the French defense. It will have cost them several build points of units and time to replace, and weakened this critical corridor here where the Germans want to advance. But again, if you go the opposite and the other result comes up, right? We roll well, let's say, and we completely knock that unit out, and we can advance some units, advance maybe 2 units into the hex. Now the Germans have a major issue in their general advance. They extended too far. Now it has cost them a unit, and that's going to be hard for them to come back from, really. And it could throw the entire case yellow progress off balance and cause a major delay in operations. So that's really the question for the Allies. Now we still need to decide, across the whole board, what are the Allies going to do? What's Russia going to do? Soviet Union, and what are the Commonwealth activities going to be? But I think that's the principal question that starts this video for the French: is, do they do the counterattack against the mech? And because it's the simple die roll, right, that controls it. It's a tough call. Now, I'm just going to show that table so you guys can see the assault table. Right, we're looking at the 2 to 1 odds. You gotta keep in mind, because it's a 1d10, it is a flat distribution of results, right? So rolling a 1 has just as much of a chance of coming up as rolling a 10, but you shouldn't look at a CRT or a table like this in that mindset, right? Now, if you were doing the 2d10 combat style, 2d10 is a bell curve distribution, a regular distribution where you're going to get more results in the middle. There's an average results and then standard deviations away from those results. And you could look at it as, this is more simplistic, but really even the 1d10 model still illustrates some really basic things, right? You can look at it in terms of percentage. So this is what I mean. A 1 and a 2 have equal chance of coming up, but they're both the same result, which is the attacker loses 2 units and everybody flips. and then you see, so that's a 20% chance, right? 2 out of 10, that's 20%. There's another 20% chance of losing one unit and everybody flips, and the defenders are fine. So that's 40% chance of just a total failure on the French part. So then at 5, we actually get something useful. Everybody flips, but we eliminate the unit and we could advance. So there's a 10% chance of that. There's a 10% chance that we eliminate the unit. We lose one unit ourselves, but we'd still get to advance after combat, though they would flip. And then from here on out, the rest of the results, which is, another 40%, are some mixture of either getting what we want, like 7 would be fine, honestly, or, 8 would work, but we'd lose some units. 9 would be great, or 9's basically the same as 7 in this case because there's only one unit there. And then a 10 would be fantastic. But again, it's in that case, only half the units would flip, and we could do that pretty strategically. So it's kind of tough, right? Like if you're looking at it in terms of bad results and good results, it's not 10% chance of some particular action coming up. It's actually more like 40% really bad stuff, and then different degrees of good for the French attack. And again, like any combat in World in Flames, you're trying to figure out, is it worthwhile? Now we have some extra units coming up for the French that could come in and help reinforce. We are getting reinforcements next turn with our armor coming back as the French. So it's not like, if we lost units attacking the Germans, we'd be completely out of sorts. We'd get some stuff back. But I don't know. And the other thing is, do the Allies want the turn to end? Well, they're starting to run out of stuff too. They want their air back. They want the ability to respond themselves. So, if they fail and they give the Germans an opportunity to counterattack, then they could exploit a hole down here. So do the rest of the Allies pass in order to make it easier for the turn to end and allow the French their one counterattack? That's something else that we could look at doing. Because the Americans don't have much to do, so they could easily pass, right? They have nothing to do. The Commonwealth kind of has everything where they want it to be, at least until the end of the turn when they can flip stuff back. They're not at war with the Italians, so they can't go sub-hunting. They won their naval combat last impulse against the Germans. And there's just not much else going on that they can do that would really change the state of the game. And so, yeah, this might be the opportunity for the Allies to pass. So I'm going to think on this for a little bit longer, and when we come back, we'll decide what we're going to do. I find myself in the conundrum of not, having a hard time deciding. I think in some ways the Germans might be like, yeah, bring it on, French, and roll poorly and lose all your, lose your defensive units. That would be really great for us. But I don't know. So here's what I'm going to do. I was looking at the combat odds table and realizing, like, okay, there's a 40% chance that the French would just get hosed, right? So what I'm going to do, because I'm playing myself, right? And this is one of those things, like, you get, when you're playing solitaire, you get to that decision point where you have to make some decision. What's the best move? I'm not really sure if this is the best move to attack. It seems like it'd be great to knock the German momentum off. That would be great. That might delay, even taking a hex back and putting units where there weren't before would slow down the Germans a lot, and that would be valuable for the Allies, would buy them more time potentially. So I think what we're going to do is I'm going to roll a die. If it's 1 through 4, we're not going to attack. I haven't even picked the Allied activities, by the way, so I'm deciding this before the true start of the Allied impulse. If it's a 5 or higher, then they're going to attack. That's the thing. I'm just going to base it off the odds on the combat table. And then whatever the actual results are, we'll see. So 1 through 4, we don't attack. I almost want to modify to like 1 to 3, because I feel like it's probably worth attacking, but 1 to 4, 40%. 40-60 seems like decent balance here. All right, so I rolled a 6, which means we're going to attack. That's what we're going to do. So the Allies are going to do that. Now, I'm just going to make this easier on myself a little bit. I was looking, the Soviet Union has nothing they can do. They need their air power back, which really is going to require at the end of the turn. The Americans don't have anything to do. The Commonwealth is also kind of waiting for the end of the turn. They have some cruisers they could send out to sea and help protect the convoys, but it's not an immediate need right now, I don't think. I don't think there's much. They just hurt the German subs, so if the Germans are going to try to do something with their navy, they might do it, but by trying to shorten the turn here, that might be the trick. So, yeah, we'll, let's see, it's only going to be a -1. Yeah, kind of a tough call. Do the Commonwealth want to do anything? Knowing that it's only going to make it a 4 or less ends the turn rather than a 3 or less, I think the Commonwealth is actually going to do something, so what they're going to do is they're going to do a naval, and what they're just going to ensure that they do is, let's see, they're going to put some ships out. Let's see, 1, 2... And then what they'll just do is, because they don't want the Axis to come out. So just so you understand, this is going to be kind of a weird thing. So the Commonwealth is doing a naval move. What they're doing is they're going to come out to the North Sea, and the reason they're doing that is if the Axis were to send their fleet out, they'd have to go through the North Sea and risk being intercepted. So rather than let the Germans have the last impulse, which is possible, where they could just pick somewhere, hit them, hit the convoys or hit the ships and clear it and disrupt it, they're going to make it harder to get out there. And so, let's see, that means going to go in the 4 box, 4 box, 3 box, 4 box, 4 box, 4 box. So there. So if the Axis wants to come out and play, they can certainly try, but they're going to have a hard time dealing with the majority of the Commonwealth Navy, which I would very much imagine they would win because they have aircraft carriers there. They would force an air-to-sea combat and probably really hurt the German Navy. That's the thinking there. So they're doing that as precaution. And then as the French, and again, I'm not going to do any other sort of activity. The French are doing a land action. I suppose it could be a combined action. Yeah, I guess it could be a combined action. Though there's not much for them to do if they did a combined. Well, we'll just do it this way. We're going to move this guy up like so. And then yeah, we'll have it as a land action. I don't want to move this guy off yet. Okay, so there we go. I think we're all right there. And if this was a combined action, I'd probably have these subs come out, French subs, just to scare the Italians a little bit off. So I moved as a combined action, I took the French subs, just put them there, just to kind of ward off the Italians. And then, yeah, we're going to have our combat. So this is the combat we described before, 9 and 8, 17, 17 to 8. 2-to-1 odds, flat die roll. All right. What's going to happen? This could be this is probably one of the more important die rolls of the game right now. If it's a 1 through 4, then it's real bad for the French. And I rolled a 4. Okay, so what is the 4 result? It is a 1 loss. Let's see. These guys are all flipped. So 1 loss, we'll lose the militia unit. And then all these guys are going to flip. And the reason why we're losing the unit here is that the German units nearby are already flipped. Oh, you guys can't see because I don't have the camera. Gosh. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. So everybody flips over here. We lost the 1 unit here, and the reason why we chose this hex is that there are no other German units here that could attack. So even if a unit moved up over here, they would be attacking, basically 1-on-1 odds, which would be very foolish of the Germans. Leaving these guys here, and then this guy will be able to move up to the next hex, the next Allied impulse. So there is a chance that the Germans... Wow, man, okay. Let's rethink this for a second. No, because I don't want to lose 2 motor. I don't want to use them. Yeah, okay. All right. I think this is fine. This is fine. We're okay. That's what we'll do. We'll lose that unit. I'm a little concerned about losing it there because what we're hoping for is that the Allies get another impulse. So, but since they probably won't, okay, we will lose a unit here. That's what we'll do. So there we go. I'm just concerned because if the Germans get to go first, if they go last or they go first to the next impulse, there'd only be 1 unit there before the Allies could put this militia forward, and then they'd get that second hex next to Paris. So I think knowing that, losing a motorized rather than the militia here, not ideal, but that's the best that we can hope for. So that was poor. That was a poor showing for the Allies. Not great, and they didn't delay the turn any. But I think that's the only activity they really have to do is just moving some units around, doing the combine so that they can get a sub out to threaten the Italians. So we're gonna, that's how it goes. The French are gonna get some bonus build points because of the units lost in their home country, but that's just the way it goes. All right. I'm going to be rolling a die for the end of the turn, which needs to be a 3 or less to end it. I rolled a 5, and so the Axis are going to get the box, and it advances 2, the marker moves 2 boxes because of the weird die roll there of an 8 last time for weather, so... yeah. Okay, Axis get another turn. What are they going to do with it? Let me think through it. Okay, I moved a couple of counters just so I could see things better, so that SS unit is on top of the air unit. Fighting with the camera. Okay. One thing I wanted to point out, I should have pointed it out earlier in the video, was that some of these units in the French line are flipped, where if you looked at the last video, they were face up. Thanks to Pete and others in the comments who helped point this out. I should have known this and I should have applied it, but it slipped my mind just moving counters around. When you inflict a retreat result on a force, the retreating force has to flip. So, in that one German combat where we didn't cause any losses, but we did cause them to retreat, the one benefit to that is that they do flip, even if the German units flip. So, again, just getting that hex and forcing the units back is valuable. So that is kind of, that had decreased the French's ability to counterattack around here, where they might have had more factors to try to attack the spear point right here, but they just can't do it. They've got too many flipped units. We're late in the turn, basically, with too many flipped units for it to really matter, really be valuable at this point. So Yeah, there you go. Kicking it over to the Axis Impulse. We're going to roll for weather. And we get a 7, which for March, April is actually rain now in the region. So rain, rain, fine, fine, fine. Rain in areas that are not even on the map. So now it's turned to rain. It's going to slide 2 boxes if we don't have the end of the turn. So finally we get some April showers, very, very much at the end of April, I guess you could look at it as. So not great weather. The Italians, the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a combined as Italy, because I have to, but I'm going to rail, and I guess you guys can't see it on camera. I railed the mech unit that was in this hex down to here, in Naples. I set the counter right here to the transports. I think I want to move the mech somewhere else, because at this point I'm not sure how much pressure we're going to apply on the French, as Italy will probably jump right into trying to hurt the Commonwealth, so I just want that mech somewhere else that I can use to transport it. The Germans, with it being raining, I think this is like one of those situations like, oh man, aircraft air to sea is halved. Now might be a good time to send the fleet out, but we're taking a lot of risks because the Commonwealth sent theirs out, so I don't know. Because of the rain, and we would lose an odds level. So here's the thing. So we do have an attack that's possible down here. So there's... Let me see. If we were saying we're going to do a combined... Yeah, let's say it's Germany. We're going to do a combined, just so that we have the capability, right? What we're going to end up doing is... I would do that, and then I could attack this hex here with 16 combat factors to 4. This is what I was kind of worried about, as to why, if I would have lost the militia here, then this hex would be double stacked, and then you couldn't really get an attack here. But I didn't know when the turn was going to end, so now this hex to the right here at the tip of the tongs is under threat, and I have 16 combat factors attacking 4. That would be 4 to 1 odds plus 1. But because of the rain, we would lose 1 odds level. Oops. Well, I think probably the more important thing is we're probably out of supply. That's probably the most important thing. Let's see, 1, 2, 1, 2. So this guy's actually out of supply. So it'd only be 10 to 4. Yeah, I don't think it makes sense to attack. The rain really hurt us here, where we can't do much, and because our HQs are so far behind the front line, our units are actually out of supply, because supply range is only 2 European hexes. And we are just too far away for this guy. And these guys, honestly, are out of supply as well. That's actually a pretty dangerous position for them to be in. Really dangerous position for some of these guys to be in. So, yeah, I don't think the Germans can do much. If they were going to do any naval... Yeah, I don't even want to do naval. I don't think there's much we can do. I don't want to contest the Commonwealth Navy until we have a better shot at it. So the Commonwealth did a pretty good job of setting up, the situation where, the Germans are going to very likely have to fight through the Navy there, and they can't afford to take any naval losses yet, not until the time comes, the real time comes. So we're going to roll a die to see if the turn ends, and I rolled a 2, so that is the end of the turn. So Germans didn't do much. They moved to rearrange some stuff, but now we're at the end of the turn. So we will start doing the end of turn stuff. I'll start to do that off camera, and we'll see what happens. Okay, starting the end turn stuff here, and I want to move through this pretty quickly. I rolled for partisans. I got a row that didn't really bring anything up. For U.S. entry, the U.S. does not get a chit this turn because they got one last turn. And then we'll look at the chit pools for the other factions. So let me just double check here. Soviet Union will pull theirs. And they actually got a 5, which is pretty rock solid. And they'll put that on defense. Again, they're not entirely sure of the German strategy. The Germans are going to pick 2. And they're going to put 1 on... they got a 1 and a 3. And what they're going to do is they're going to put the 1 on offense and the 3 on defense. I'm sorry, the other way around. There we go. 3 on defense, 1 on offense. But the Soviet Union doesn't know that it's a 1 on offense. So they just see that a chit went into the defensive pool, U.S. entry pool for the Germans against the Soviets, and they saw a chit go into the offensive. So as far as they know, it could be a very high value chit. So it's not totally clear of the German intention to do Sea Lion yet. Again, because I'm playing myself, I can't trick myself too much, but once it's clear and evident from like an objective point of view, that's when I would say the Allies can start to respond more appropriately and accordingly, seeing what the Germans are planning. And I'm not sure that that's really clear yet. Could go different ways, right? Now the Americans have 14 U.S. entry, and we already took the U.S. East Coast escorts. Let's see, is there anything else worth doing? We could do selective service, because we have, again, 5, 7, double to 14. So yeah, I think we'll go ahead. Well, I guess I could also do Edward R. Murrow reports from London. Yeah, we'll go ahead and do Edward R. Murrow reports from London. We're going to roll the die for tension, and we don't move a chit to tension. Okay, so we don't lose anything to tension, and Edward R. Murrow reports from London. So Edward R. Murrow was, I believe, a journalist and basically kind of helped add to the public conversation of the U.S. and the perspective of entering the war on the part of the Allies. So we did that. I'll make a note of that in my log that I'm keeping for this game. So yeah, there we go. Edward R. Murrow reports from London has been selected. We did just have enough U.S. entry to do it. So there you go. U.S. entry being done, we're going to do return to base. I think that's going to be pretty simple, so we'll take care of that off camera, and I'll also do final reorg. And I'll go ahead and skip, when I come back on camera, we'll just look at the production, and we'll look at what all the powers built for the turn. And then we'll move on through the rest of things. So we'll be back. Okay, so we did the return to base, we did final reorg, nothing too crazy there, I won't spend much time on it, just cycling out of naval units, some stuff going back to port, and looking to send back out of port when the time comes. So in terms of production, a couple of things that are kind of interesting. We still don't have our extra convoy where it needs to be for the Commonwealth to get their missing build point. They're going to get to do this basically next turn, but it's taking a while to get the convoys in place. I think it's a great example of how, when the subs or German Navy can actually start disrupting convoys, it's going to cause some major problems for the Commonwealth. But until then, they can boast a very robust build allotment. A couple of other things. So the Germans are picking up a factory out of Belgium, a red factory, and some extra resources from France and Belgium. That doesn't really change their overall production very much because their sort of limiting factor are their factories. So while getting the factory from Belgium helped, they have a lot of extra resources that they can't do much with. Had Italy joined the war, we could be sending excess resources to them, but we're holding back probably to our error as Italy, but oh well. Production was pretty straightforward stuff, so I have what was built here in this slice for the current turn, and we'll place them elsewhere on the cycle here as we examine them. One thing to keep in mind is the French, because they lost a resource, actually had fewer production this turn, so they missed out on an important resource, so they only had 7 production, which was then modified by 0.75, and so they didn't end up with much. But because they had lost 2 corps-sized units in France during the German offensive, they got a bonus build point for each one, which allowed them to actually have a decent number of production points this turn, as opposed to previous turns. And that bonus build point you get when your corps-sized units are destroyed in your home territory, and it's sort of like you're recouping the losses, the men, the material could be salvaged and used to form cohesive units once again, so you're not missing out on everything. Right? Because every time a unit is destroyed, that's not representing, 40,000 people dying. That's not what happens, right? So, and amusingly enough, apparently the Soviets also got a bonus build point because they had lost 1 unit that was army size for them, which is technically corps size for them, attacking Finland. And based on the rules, question, answers that I'm getting, I'm doing research online, it appears that, basically a Soviet unit attacking out of its home country, if it's destroyed, will provide a bonus build point to that country. So it was attacking out of Leningrad, attacking into Finland. It was, the unit was lost basically, but the Soviets apparently still get the build point, or at least that's what I'm getting online. If I have to go back and fix it, then I have this record of the build to fix if we need to do it. But I believe they get the bonus build point. So that's a good help for when you're operating near your home country or you're being attacked. Getting those bonus build points can be a pretty nice, consolation prize for losing units. So very quickly, we're going to go through what the builds were. Try to move pretty swiftly here as we can get to the action. We'll start with the Commonwealth first. So what they're going to do is they've got a motorized unit, but unfortunately it's a Canadian one, which means it's going to start in Canada, and we're going to have to get it transported over to the UK or wherever else we want to send it. So that is sort of a challenge we're going to have to deal with, but that's going to show up 3 turns from now. 1, 2, 3. We also built a Commonwealth fighter, so it's not the best fighter in the world, but we want to build it out and have it, so we've got that. That'll come in 2 turns. 1, 2. And then we worked on the Navy a little bit. So we had this aircraft carrier, the Indomitable, which you can't really see because the focus was in the construction pool. It is going to be, we spent 4 to pay its 2nd round, and so in 6 turns, which means we'll get it a year from now, it will come off the board, or come off the production spiral full force. We also spent 4 to repair the Queen Elizabeth battleship here, and so it'll be back in 2 turns, because it takes, let's see, repairs take 2 turns. Yep, so 1, 2, and we'll have the Queen Elizabeth, just to help fill out our Commonwealth Navy. For the French, who had limited ability, it was kind of a straightforward thing. How long is France even going to be around for? We don't know, but I built a infantry, and this is actually a pretty strong infantry, a 6, but it's going to come in 2 turns from now, so we kind of have to hope that France survives that long. And then we also built a fighter to replace the one that was destroyed in the skies above France, also 2 turns. Whether or not these units will actually even get to come on the board is going to be a tough call, right? And I could see some situations where people are trying to say, well, maybe you should have built something different. Just building more units. I think we have units. We need things that can kind of help shift the balance, which is really air power. Italy spent all of its production building a naval bomber. So they need to start building more of these to help control the Mediterranean. This is actually a pretty good naval bomber. And so we started building that. It's got good range. I can operate in the Med, so that'll come in 1, 2, 3 turns from now. The Germans obviously built a whole set of stuff. So just to show, they're building the fighters that they lost. So both the 6 combat factor and the 5 combat factor. Gosh, you can't see that. It's hard. There we go. Rebuilding these 2 fighters that were destroyed. And the force pool was empty, so it was easy to get these guys. We're building a motorized infantry, another regular infantry, and then we're building a militia to kind of round it all out. So the idea is more infantry units, more ground units, because we're going to need to replace losses, and we know there's going to be bloody fighting to come. And then just knowing that there is going to be a need to fight in the skies. We need to get the birds back in the air to fight the air battle for the UK. And then finally, for the Soviets, this is a pretty straightforward thing. They're just building. They're building a garrison. It's a strong garrison unit. I randomly picked this one again. This was the one that was destroyed, I believe. So it's pretty strong. Then some regular infantry. We actually got a white print unit, which was lucky. And then an armor unit, because we do want to have some armor eventually, and might as well build them now while we can. And that brought us to 14 build points. So if we end up having to go back and take away their extra build point, one of these units will have to get modified or swapped out with something. But I think this worked out pretty well. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. 1, 2, and 1, 2. So there we go. Production is done, and we'll take a look at the conquest step next. Okay, I'm zooming in on Belgium for a second just to talk about the peace step. So we're just about at the end of the turn. We still have the peace step to look at. So the conquest step is easy. We can say that Belgium is indeed conquered. While there are Allied units in Belgium, the capital has been taken, and all the other important places as well for what it matters for. And so Belgium becomes conquered. But just like the Netherlands, we would note that it becomes incompletely conquered, which means that basically the Belgian nation has to pick where its new home country is going to be, because technically Belgium had the Belgian Congo as a minor country, and that's way down here on the in Africa and on the off-map boxes. So with that in mind, there really aren't any Belgian units left to worry about. So it almost doesn't matter where we pick because there's just nothing really left except for, there are some ships out here that technically the Commonwealth controls. So I think, while we could pick the Belgian Congo, I don't think there's much reason to do that. And instead, the embassies in London get a little bit bigger. So not only is the Netherlands government in exile in London, but we'll say that the United Kingdom is the home country for Belgium as well, and they move their government in exile there. Now, all of this being done by the Allies without totally comprehending that the UK is going to be under the gun of a potential Axis invasion, of course, but we'll get there when we worry about it. So that's really simple and straightforward. Now, there is another step here that is could have been important, but it ends up not being important this time. But it was something that they could have tried for. So there's the Allied, what is it? Allied minor support step, where you check for Allied support. Basically, the Allies support an unconquered minor country an Axis major power has declared war on by having 4 or more allied major power core-size units in it during this step. A minor country can only ever be supported once. So basically, this would be a bonus to the U.S. entry for the Allies, like it's a good thing to be supporting a minor country. But you need 4 or more allied major core in there. So Netherlands doesn't qualify, and Belgium does not qualify. There are only 2 units in Belgium right now. That is the 2 Commonwealth units. So while the Allies are technically supporting Belgium, they're holding on to some Belgian territory on the part of the UK, they don't have 4 units, and so they don't get the bonus to U.S. entry. So, bummer. There you go. And it almost wouldn't have mattered anyway, because it needed to be an unconquered country. Technically, Belgium is conquered, so the Allies don't get that. But it's worth talking about, because had, maybe the Allies been able to get into Brussels, or maybe they would have taken Brussels somehow, and they held on and got enough units, in those couple of hexes, they might have gotten the bonus. So there is an incentive to defend Belgium, as much as you can, but the Germans just were doing too well anyway and kind of worked their way through as it was. So not much for that, that we can really deal with. No mutual peace, Vichy Declaration. Well, I guess the other thing we need to consider is, do we let the Soviets off the hook in the Soviet-Finnish War? So we've gotten to the peace step now, and the Germans actually have the option. I almost forgot about this. Thank goodness I remembered here as I'm recording. The Germans need to decide, do they enforce some sort of peace between the Finns and the Soviet Union? As it stands right now, the Soviets have not been able to take any hex in Finland. Their one opening offensive into the territory was met with fierce Finnish resistance. The Finns have called out their reserve, and basically, they're good to go there. And it's going to be a tough nut to crack as the Soviets, not without building more and more units. And of course, they are building more units. So yeah, what do we do? Well, here's the consideration here in terms of what are the real options. So let's see, if we enforce a peace, and we can do it because no hex of Finland outside the borderlands contains any Soviet units. That's true. The Soviets don't even have any hexes in the Finnish borderlands. If we enforce a peace, Finland reverts to neutrality. The USSR gains control of all hexes the USSR controlled at the start of the war. So, had the Finns taken any USSR territory, they would get it back. And then the USSR gains control of the borderlands exactly as if Finland had allowed the claim, provided there's at least one Soviet land unit in the borderlands. Well, there isn't, so they actually would not get control of the borderlands. Germany may align Finland during any later Axis declaration of war step, and the USSR may not declare war on Finland again. So that's kind of interesting. So based on how I read that in step 19. Rules 19.6.1, because the Soviets have failed to take any territory in Finland, the Germans can electively, initiate. It's not Germany the nation; it's Germany the player. It's like role playing the peace deal, ceasefire between the Finnish government and the Soviet government. And based on my reading of the rules, they could do this right now. The Soviets would get nothing for their problems. They would not get the Finnish borderlands because they don't have a single Soviet unit in the borderlands. Finland would go to neutrality, and then basically the USSR could not declare war on Finland, and the Germans later, when they're at war with the Soviet Union, could align Finland and bring them into the war against the Allies. And so, what do we want to do with that? What to do here? If we let the USSR off the hook by enforcing peace now, the Soviet Union will have the capability to steer its other units against Romania. And we do want to make sure that we can get Romania for their oil as the axis, right? That's sort of, well, I guess without playing the oil rules, it's not as important. But if we let the Soviets off the hook too soon, then that could be a problem. But maybe we stop it while we're ahead, and we keep them from getting the Finnish borderlands. Then we could align them. Now see, this is the interesting part. So if we forced a peace deal now, we would keep the Finnish borderlands. The USSR would not get it. We could then align Finland in the next phase, and then by doing that, we could actually start to put German units in Finland to help support, one, help support Finland, and two, basically provide an avenue by which we can attack the Soviet Union if we needed to or we wanted to. It wouldn't just be the Finns by themselves fighting against the Soviet Union. So I think what we want to do, man, I don't know. I'm going to have to think on this. Okay, so here's what I think we're going to do. I think I'm going to go ahead and have the Germans enforce peace, and then this way we remove the ability of the Soviets to basically get into Finland anymore. I think if the Russians keep concentrating, they could eventually probably force the Finns back and be working their way through. I mean, they might roll poorly and lose some more units, but I think, having already lost a unit as the Russians kind of slow them down a little bit. And so what we can do as the Germans is, we piece them out, they go neutral, and then on the very first impulse of the next turn, the Germans can just align them and then have basically the Finns enter the war with the Axis, but not be at war with the Soviets at all, and basically, force, if the Soviets want to even mess around in Finland again, they have to declare war on Germany. We have a neutrality pact, so all is well. So I think that makes sense. And we managed to do all of this avoiding having the Nazi-Soviet pact reduce the resources going to Germany. Now, that hasn't really mattered because we've had surplus resources anyway, but I think this will work out. The other nice thing is we're actually going to get a resource from Finland to Germany. So we're going to have a nice excess of resources, really, that we can send to Italy once they're in the game. So I think I will enforce the peace. I'm not going to remove any of the Finnish units, even though that's what you would normally do when a power or a country goes to neutrality, because I'm just going to align them in the next impulse, and I'm not going to put all the units back. That's just, blah, I don't want to deal with that. So I'm going to leave them there, but know that, yeah, there is now a peace treaty in place between the Finns and the Soviets, and the Finns will join the Axis fully, being a welcomed member, showing how good they are, and having that means that the Soviets will have to make sure they have garrison on that border in order to defend it if the Russians and the Germans are at war at some point in the future. Who would think that could happen? I don't know. So there you go. Okay, so that's the end of the March-April turn. I think what we're just going to do is we're going to get into the reinforcement of the May-June turn here right away. I'll probably do a time check, but I think we've got some time left here. If we're going to make it an hour-long video, I think we've got some time. We could look at doing reinforcements and maybe getting started there. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, I did a quick time check, and we are getting close to an hour. I think I might want to just wrap up the video here before we get too deep into the May-June turn. So in the next video, we'll look at the reinforcements for the May-June turn and get the May-June turn started, where we're going to roll initiative and everything. There is one thing that I'm going to take care of in this video right now, which technically wouldn't come until a little bit later in the turn itself, but it makes sense to address here. In the last turn for March and April, the Axis went first and they went last, which means that when it comes to the initiative track over here, because they had that sort of beginning and ending, the initiative marker actually shifts like so. To the 0. So already the Axis is sort of losing its initiative advantage by a little bit by happenstance, unfortunately, even though they did ask for the 1 reroll. So it could very well be that for the May-June turn, that the Allies go first, in which case we could see maybe some counterattacks. We could see some adjusting of the line to improve its strength around Paris. I think the Allies probably would like to go first so that they can arrange that in better order. So I think this turn will be, this coming turn will be an interesting one. Italy will have to decide when it wants to join, but otherwise we've got a lot of stuff kind of rocking and rolling here. So we'll see. So we'll catch you in the next one, guys. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I suppose not a whole lot of crazy stuff happened in this video other than some strategy discussion and sort of rounding out of the turn. But we'll come back for another installment in the Case Yellow series, I guess, of videos here as we head into May-June 1940. So thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Keep on gaming. We'll see you later.